tonight we have with us again a good friend of Jazz St. Louis, wonderful trumpet player Riley Mulherkar, graduate of Juilliard. He's performed with Wynton Marsalis, Anna Devere Smith, Alan Cummings, just to name a few. He's also a founder of the New Music Brass Quintet, the Westerlies, artistic director at Jazz at Joy in Aiken, South Carolina, and he directs the Summer Advanced Institute at Seattle Jazz Ed in his hometown of Seattle, Washington. So welcome once again, Riley. We're so glad to have you with us one more time.
Thank you, Andy. It is good to be back. Yeah, this has become a nice little weekly tradition for us to get to hang and talk about all things jazz, from the history to modern day, as we'll be getting into today, jazz auditions and all that stuff.
Yeah, so I think we're going to break things down a little bit, talking about sort of taking the approach that we're maybe 8 to 12 months out from an audition, even thinking about, so if you're watching this, if you're a high school junior, even a senior, looking at auditioning next year. If you're in college, you're looking at grad school auditions, or if you're even younger, looking at future auditions just to plan this out, or even looking at things like all district, all state auditions, any other, Grammy bands, any of those kind of auditions, that sort of thing. So we're just kind of break it down by timeline, I think. And so, Riley, we're starting 8 to 12 months out. What phase are you in, and what are you looking for?
Totally. It's a great question. I think so much of the audition process for any number of those situations, as soon as you started listening to them, I started thinking, yeah, there's so many, when we're coming up as young musicians, there are a million opportunities available, but so often they require some sort of audition and application. And that process can be very daunting. And if you haven't gone through it before, especially I think at the college level, if you haven't gone through it before, which of course nobody has when they're auditioning for undergrad, it's such a mystery, so intimidating, and really nerve-wracking and stressful. I remember as a young student feeling very overwhelmed by not always knowing what I was supposed to be working on or how I could best prepare for an audition experience. So to your question, if we start with, let's zoom out. Let's say you've got 8 to 12 months before an audition. What kinds of things should you be thinking about? I think one of the most important things in terms of music education in a post-high school setting and a college setting is just to research. I think research is the name of the game for this stage, and research many things. So one of the things that we want to be researching a year out, maybe when you're a junior in high school, is what kind of program is going to be right for you. So there's so many different ways to pursue music after high school. You could pursue it in a conservatory experience. So I went to a conservatory. That means that I was only studying music. I wasn't going to regular classes, academic classes. I was just studying music classes and music performance. There are also universities that have music programs. There are some universities that have music schools within them, conservatories within them. There are other universities where you can study music as part of a larger curriculum, a more standard university curriculum. There are liberal arts colleges that may offer music as well. They may have student ensembles. They may have music faculty as well. There are community colleges that have extraordinary music programs. When I was growing up in Seattle, I spent a lot of time playing in the local Seattle area community college, jazz, big bands, ensembles, and some of the best faculty. Where I grew up in Seattle, they were teaching at community colleges in Seattle. So there are all these different ways that music can fit into your post-high school life. And I think when we're talking 8 to 12 months out, a year out, or more, you want to start to think about which of these experiences might be right for you. And the way to do that is not only just to research, but also to start reaching out. So if you're interested in a program, and this may be a program um, at a conservatory, this may be a college program, or this may be maybe you're looking at a program that Jazz St. Louis is offering and you want to learn more about that program. One of the first things you can do is go online and look up who's on the faculty, who are the teachers, and that'll give you a great sense of what that experience is going to be like. And then most often a university, a conservatory, an organization, when they list their faculty, they'll also list contact info for that faculty. Now, one of the things I always recommend is to proactively reach out to whoever's on faculty. You could reach out to them with a question, say, hey, I'm really excited to audition for Jazz St. Louis's Jazz U program, or hey, I'm really excited to audition to the Berklee School of Music, or I'm really excited to audition for the Juilliard School, and I really want to study with you. Do you have any tips? Or maybe you ask them, hey, would you have time for a lesson? Maybe a lesson on Zoom, maybe there's someone in your area. All of a sudden you start to build a relationship with a faculty member. And not only will that help give you a sense of whether that program could be a good fit for you as a musician, but also it'll give them a sense of who you are as a student. And I think, you know, we're going to get to this, but when we get all the way to audition day, the more comfortable you can be in that room and a better relationship you can have built with the faculty, the better the whole process is going to go. So this early stage is really about doing that research and trying to be as proactive as possible about seeing who's on faculty, reaching out to them, asking questions, maybe getting a lesson. And then also, in addition to that, in addition to faculty, one of the things that I also recommend is talk to current students and recent alumni of any program, whether it be a local, you know, local big band, or whether it be university. Anywhere you're going to invest your time and invest your money, you want to know what that experience is going to be like. And the best way you can find out what it's really like is to talk to other folks who have been through it. So I always like to, you know, offer, if you, I think between the resources of Jazz St. Louis and all the wonderful guest artists that come through Jazz St. Louis, we probably have connections with folks who have been to just about every major university, conservatory music program I can think of in the whole country. There's a good chance that I may know someone, or Brian Carter, or Erica von Kleist, or Andy may know someone, and we can, you know, help facilitate those introductions. So when you have these questions about, well, you know, what is a jazz program at the Manhattan School of Music look like? You can talk to a student there, or talk to someone who just graduated, to give you an honest take on the strengths and weaknesses of any program, because every program has its strengths and every program has its, I won't say its weaknesses, but maybe focuses that may be aligned with what you're interested or less aligned. So the more we can do that research, reach out to people at this stage, 8 to 12 months out or longer, it's never too early to get started, the better.
Absolutely. You know, talking about, I mean, even once you've sort of narrowed down whether you're looking for something more like a conservatory that's super music focused, or even something that's more like you know, just a university music department that's a, you know, public university or something like that. What are some of the other really important, you know, just general things that you might look for besides the type of program? Is it, are you prioritizing your applied faculty, the ensemble directors, the theory department? Like, is there anything like that that generally sticks out to you?
Yeah, I mean, I think all of those things, the first thing I always encourage students to think about is, you know, for themselves, what makes them happiest and what fulfills them the most. Because there are some students who are going to thrive in a setting where it's music, music, music all the time. And there are other students who are really looking for a more varied coursework and may want to go to economics classes and be able to play in a school ensemble. I think one of the valuable things about reaching out to current students or recent alumni is that you can get real specific with questions about, say, how many lessons per semester are you actually getting in this program? Or what are the ensemble offerings like? Do you get to bring in music you want to play? Is there a set curriculum of the music you have to learn? And again, there's no right answers here. Every program is going to be a little different that way. But some of the things I'll look for is, what is the student to faculty ratio? How much playing time are you actually getting in a program? Uh, and and also just, how large is the program? What is your community of fellow students going to look like? Because I think, when I look back on my educational experience, the biggest thing that has made an impact on my life is the community that I had there. And that goes for any organization, whether it's college, whether it's a master's program after undergrad, whether it's a program like Jazz St. Louis, the community that you form in the time you invest, I think is one of the most valuable things. So when you talk to people who are part of that community or who have been through that experience, I think you can glean a lot of really invaluable information.
Yeah, I like that. Even that concept of thinking about, even things like, if I'm writing music, can I bring it into my ensembles? Is that going to be welcome? That sort of thing.
Right.
I know that's definitely something that I think people can overlook or not think about. So,
or if I want classical lessons, but play in a jazz ensemble, or if I want to be able to play chamber music, but also in a big band, things like that can also vary wildly in different institutions. And I know a lot of folks who've gone to one place and then been really upset because they can't do both things, or because they have to do both things and they want to do one thing. So the more you can do to ask those questions early, 1 year out, talk to people, then you're not going to be one of those folks who gets into a program, ends up there, and then says, wait a second, this isn't what I had in mind. This isn't what I meant to sign up for.
yeah. And I think too, to your point about that, if you're talking to people that have been through the program and maybe had some of those experiences, and you start to realize, oh, maybe I wouldn't be able to do X, Y, and Z at every university. Wow, I never, that also just gives you ammunition, not just for that one school, but for all the schools you're looking at or all the programs you're looking at.
Totally.
To say like, oh, I need to ask about taking this type of lessons or playing in this ensemble everywhere I go. So that's very cool. Yeah. I don't want to get too hung up at especially talking about college, just selection that can go on. That could be its own topic. Yeah. So moving on, specifically looking at auditions, we've done our research. We're understanding some places that we want to look at. Now we're more in that 5 to 8 months out range from the audition. What are you looking at doing at that time?
Yeah. So this is the section where now we really start thinking about the audition itself, and the most important thing, of course, which is the music. This is the time where I encourage everyone to really select their repertoire. I know it seems like a long time away to pick what few songs you may be playing for an audition, whether it's whether it's a Jazz U audition, whether it's a college audition, whether it's a master's program audition. But I think the earlier we can pick the repertoire, the deeper we can dive into really getting comfortable with it, so it feels like it's second nature by the time we get in that audition room. So again, this goes back to the idea of research. It's incredible, and I'm sure, Andy, you've had this experience being on the other end of it. Whenever I'm on the other end of it, being a judge for auditions, it'll drive me crazy the amount of times that the audition requirements are not followed as they've been specified. And you hate to see it every time, because you just want to say, I want to, give you full credit for what you are presenting here, but also it's frustrating me to see, you as a student, you as an auditionee, going off of what was asked of you in this very specific audition setting. So the more we can follow the audition requirements to a T, the better we will present ourselves as a student, as a musician. This is not an opportunity to show every single thing you know. This is an opportunity to present your best self, and really, be in the context of what they're looking for. So when you're choosing your repertoire, you're choosing your songs to play, you may see on a college's website, we want 3 selections, 1 blues, 1 bossa nova or Latin song, and 1 song of your choice. Other schools or programs may have much more specific repertoire requirements. Some schools may say 2 selections of your choosing, and you have free reign. So I'll say 2 things here. One of which is, this is not the time for you to try to tackle giant steps in 12 keys because it's always been a goal that you've wanted to do. That's a wonderful task to do parallel to all of this work, but this is a time to go with what is most comfortable to you, whatever is, challenging but comfortably challenging within your reach. I always recommend, having this conversation with any teachers you may have, because they may have heard you play certain songs and say, every time you play a blues in the key of G, you get to something that's so special, and that could help inform you. Okay, I know I really thrive when I'm playing a blues in this key. I will pick some repertoire that can showcase that. And the other thing I'll say, in addition to trying to find repertoire that really fits you like a glove, is that, again, the more research we can do, the more efficient we can be with our practice. Because let's say you have 3 auditions and they all have slightly different requirements. One program says choose 2 songs, totally up to you. Another program says play a blues, a bossa nova, and another program says we want one thing medium tempo, another thing up tempo, and another song slow. You might look at that and be like, okay, these are 3 different auditions, 3 different criteria. This is a lot of practice to do. But if we do this research in this 5 to 8 month timeframe, when there's still plenty of time to prepare, we can say, hey, if I play this blues, it could be one of my pieces I choose for that first audition, where I can choose anything. It'll fit the bill for the second program. And in this third option, the blues could be my medium tempo thing. So that's one song that I'm going to work on, and it fits for all 3 of those auditions. And then you could say, okay, now I'm going to do this fast song, but the second audition, they wanted something with the Latin feel. Well, I could choose this song, which is up tempo, but it has a Latin feel, and it could be my choice selection for that first audition, where I get 2 songs of my choice. Now, all of a sudden, you have 2 pieces that you can really focus on and play at all the auditions, rather than 3, 6, 7, 8 pieces for a number of different auditions. So we want to try to make it easy on ourselves in this stage, where we're picking our repertoire, things that are comfortable to us, that we can prioritize consistency over showmanship, and really try to display as diverse of an aspect of our playing as possible in this repertoire. But we're thinking about going easy on ourselves, being efficient. And I used to say killing 3 birds with 1 stone, but then I heard someone say, a friend of mine said, feeding 2 birds with 1 seed. So that's the goal here: feed 2 birds, 3 birds with 1 seed.
Yeah, I was, thinking about that too, from the side of things that I'm often on now, and hearing auditions and things. And this may be less towards somebody who's, seriously going into a collegiate jazz program, but, say you don't have a regular private teacher. Or the other thing I've seen is people who, a pianist or a guitarist who's studying with somebody, or even a trumpet player who's studying with somebody who's not super jazz oriented, but they're coming into a program like our Jazz U program, and they say, and their person isn't the best equipped to help them navigate the requirements and figure out all of this stuff. What would you say to somebody in that sort of position?
It's a great question, and I'm going to sound like a broken record, but here's what I would say is I would go back to what we were talking about in that first step of reaching out to students who have been through the program or going online and finding the faculty. So if I were applying to Jazz U and I studied with a classical teacher, but I knew this was a jazz program. So when I was in high school, my private teacher was a classical trumpet player, but I was playing a lot of jazz. And if I wanted to get someone's advice that wasn't my classical teacher, what I would do in that situation is I would go to Jazz St. Louis's website. I would try to find who are the ensemble coaches or who's running the program, and I'd write them an email. And first I would just introduce myself and I'd say, hey, I'm really excited about auditioning for this program. That's step one. Already you've been proactive, you've put yourself out there, they have an idea of who you are, you're building a relationship. That is awesome. And if that's the only lesson I can teach today, reaching out on behalf of yourself and being proactive, that will take you so far in all things music. But if I were to add to that email, I would love to talk to another trumpet player who's been through the program so I can learn more about that program. Or I would love to talk to an ensemble coach so I can better prepare for my audition. Those types of questions will help connect you with people who know the program intimately and can really help you say, here's exactly what's going to go down. Here's what I recommend you should play. Is that comfortable for you? What were you thinking? Oh yeah, you've got it from here. That's a great choice. Or, oh, that choice is maybe a little, it's awesome, but maybe not right for the audition. So why don't you try thinking about this? Again, we're in this stage 5 to 8 months out where there's plenty of time. So the earlier we can have those conversations, the better.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, because I know we've seen over the years, we've seen students come in and they've just not gotten good advice. So I just want to make sure that people are seeking advice in the right places, and definitely, like Riley said, if I can speak for the Jazz U program, any of our faculty, if you already have a relationship with them, if you go to Bob DeBoo's weekly jam session, which is now going on,
which I've been to, and I could not recommend it more highly.
Right. But you can get to know, somebody like Bob, who's on our faculty and teaches one of our ensembles, and then just ask them in person, or always email me or somebody like that. So that's a great point.
Yeah.
And that does.
One of the wonderful things about jazz music is it's all about mentorship. So the idea of like going up to Bob at the session and saying, hey, Bob, I love your session and I really want to study with you at Jazz U. Do you have any tips for the audition or I was thinking about playing Billy's Bounce. What do you think? Is that a good choice? Should I think about something else? Bob's the perfect person to just, Bob's the type of guy where instantly he would take your nerves away and you would, know that everything's gonna be cool.
Yes, definitely. Yeah. And I know I went through some of the same things with the college audition too, of just like having lessons with folks ahead of time and like getting there even on days that weren't like the audition days or the visit days, where I got a little more, got to shadow a student, go to regular rehearsals, when the faculty maybe weren't on their best behavior, and experience like a real day.
Yeah, and another thing that was big for me growing up, and I know with once things start getting going, with all the touring musicians that come through Jazz St. Louis, when touring artists come through town, introducing yourself, like go to the show, see the show, and respectfully, you don't want to just march into the green room back there and, interrupt their vibe, because they may be eating dinner or they may be tired because they've been on the road for a month. But uh, finding an opportunity to introduce yourself. And if you go on the first night and they're in town for 3 nights, there's nothing wrong with saying, you know, hey, could I, again, this is post COVID, but, could I buy you a cup of coffee, or could I buy you lunch tomorrow? And would you have time to, for me to ask you a few questions? And this is not about auditions as much, just like learning the music and trying to uh, get in touch with these people. But if they happen to be faculty at a program you're interested in, even better. Uh, but I got to spend time with so many people when I was growing up, like Roy Hargrove, who we don't even have here anymore, just by going up after the show and saying, hey, I know you're playing tomorrow night. If you got half an hour tomorrow for a trumpet lesson, I'll be there. And then I got to have a lesson with Roy when I was in high school. So things like that, I can't recommend enough for uh, you know fighting the shyness, and just introducing yourself, because magical things can happen from that.
Yeah, we've seen that a lot. I mean, students in our Jazz U program get access to free tickets and ability to come to shows. So I've seen that with several students who like, oh, I love this person, or I may want to go study where they're teaching, and they've come down 3 or 4 nights on a 5-night run and like,
Yeah.
really hung out. And I've seen the opposite too of people coming in town and being like, isn't this one kid here? I heard them at this festival, and are they going to be around?
Mm-hmm.
And people recruiting students who they've already had a relationship with while they're here. So
Yeah.
a lot of good
It's
stuff.
really, I mean, that's what's so special about Jazz St. Louis being both the high level performance venue that it is, in addition to the educational center that it is, because those types of connections, um, it's just so special. And not to just go on about it, but I think also jazz, since it's such an intergenerational music, the idea that young students can get to hear and meet some of the older generation of jazz musicians who, were even closer to, like, being in it in the 60s and in the 70s and in the 80s. Those types of relationships are what keep this music going.
Cool. So maybe we can move on to the next stage.
Cool.
And so now we're looking more 4 to 6 months out. What are you looking at in that time frame?
Cool. So we've done our research. We've picked our repertoire based on all the auditions we may be preparing for. And now we're 4 to 6 months out. I'm going to go through this section a little more quickly because it's really sort of college specific, more so than something like Jazz U. But this is a time to start your pre-screening auditions for many colleges. Now, pre-screening is a word that may be foreign to many of you out there. And all it sort of means is an audition, a recorded audition before a live audition. So some colleges and universities may require you to send a tape of yourself or a video of yourself before you actually do audition there and in person. Now, it's totally different school to school, and this is what you find out in that research phase. Some schools may only ask you for this step, this video, and never have a live audition. Other schools may only have a live audition. Some programs may have both a pre-screening audition as well as a live audition. So this is the time for any school or any program that is asking you to make a video of yourself or a recording of yourself. This is the time to jump on that. 4 to 6 months out. The key things I always stress are that no program, whether it's Juilliard, whether it's university, whether it's community college, nobody is looking for a studio mixed and mastered your debut album performance in audition form. That is not it at all. So especially in terms of the money that you're going to invest here, please do not go book a studio. I mean, hey, go book a studio and make a record if you want to. But for this audition, all the judges, the faculty will want to hear is, what do you sound like? What's a representation of you? So professional quality is not the goal here. I think iPhones are pretty common these days for recording pre-screens. When I was coming up, we used like Zoom recorders, which were like small handheld recorders. But this is really just a time for you to try to capture what you sound like using this repertoire that you've been working on for so long now.
When it comes to this stage and doing these pre-screen recordings, if they're wanting you to record a tune, and you have the ability to do it with live people, what are your thoughts on using a rhythm section, hiring a couple, just two people to come do it, even if you're not doing a studio recording, but still hiring or getting somebody of real high quality to play with you?
Yeah, I think the key thing is not to break the bank here, just because you know it's just not really feasible to hire a band, hire a studio, do all this stuff. If you have peers that you're comfortable playing with, I think that's often the best thing. Oftentimes if you're in a program like Jazz U, or if you play in your high school band, there you may have friends that are auditioning as well. So you may help them play with them on their audition recording. They may help play with you on your audition recording. So it's sort of, it all evens out, comes out in the wash in that way. But also, I think often for horn players, just a piano accompaniment may well be enough for something like this, or guitar accompaniment, some sort of chordal accompaniment. And then, of course, a drummer's audition is going to look a little bit different. They may ask you in the requirement to hear you playing with piano and bass, or guitar and bass. But I would recommend against trying to like hire, anything professional quality, because at the end of the day, they just want to hear you. And if what you're playing is just a reflection of who you are and where you're at in the stage of development, which is not the final stage. This is just, where you are right now. And the whole reason you want to go to a program is to get better. So it's not like you're trying to, again, record your solo album, or, be John Coltrane. You just want to show this is where I am, and I want to pursue my education in your program.
Cool. So I know we were wanting to get on to probably the heftiest section of the just 4 months till like right before the audition. What are you looking for in that time frame?
So this is the part where it's really about like, how do I practice for an audition, for this unique sort of weird thing that feels less natural than a jam session or a concert, because an audition, you're there, you're sort of on your own. People are judging you in this weird way. It's scary and uncomfortable, but it's okay, because we have time and we're going to practice, and it's all going to be okay. So the first thing I stress is consistency. When I was young, I was really into biking and cycling, and I read this book by a now disgraced cyclist by the name of Lance Armstrong. But he had this thing that he said in the book, which resonated with me, which is that he would say, it doesn't matter how many miles you ride a day, you just got to get on the bike every day. And I think the same with practicing. It is so much better to practice 20 minutes every day than it is to practice 7 hours and, get in the zone of Charlie Parker for one day and then burn out and go the rest of the week without touching your horn or touching your instrument. Consistency is the number one secret to your success here. If you can have consistent daily practice, whether that means 20 minutes, whether that means 30 minutes, 40 minutes, maybe some days it's a few hours of practice, but you're always making sure you're getting on your instrument, that's going to be the thing that's going to help you the most. Because 4 months of consistent practice, I mean, there are going to be some really obvious results, and it's going to make you so much more comfortable, which is sort of the most important thing here. Now, when we're doing that practice, how do we want to practice? Well, the first thing I'll say is the first advice I ever got as a musician when I was in 3rd grade, and I just started playing trumpet. And Wynton Marsalis was on tour in Seattle, so I did, same thing. I ran backstage after the show. I said, "Mr. Marsalis, I'm a trumpet player," and he just told me to practice slow. And he told me then, and to this day, I think it's probably the best practice advice I've ever gotten. Practice slow, even if it's a song that you think you know, even if it's a blues. For me, if I'm going to audition on a blues for something in 4 months, I'm going to take that blues and I'm going to practice it slowly. I'm going to practice it slowly and give myself challenges like different parameters, try to only play with one note, or try to only play one rhythm, or try to hit the third of every chord, or try to, play it in different keys. I'm going to do all these things very slowly, very, very slowly. Because the slower we practice, the more it gets ingrained in our muscle memory and our brain's memory, the more we soak it in, so that when we speed it up, and when there's pressure, and when there's nerves and all these other elements that start to come in, the deeper it is in here, the better we will do in the moment. Another thing I recommend is to record yourself when you're practicing. We've probably all had the feeling where sometimes you're in the zone and you're like, man, I sound so good right now. I wish this was the audition right now. But sometimes you record yourself and you hear yourself when you thought you were just, on your A game, and it might sound a little different than it sounded in your mind. So if we can listen to ourselves, it gives us a little bit more objective of a sensibility of where we're actually at in our development. Now, sometimes it can be brutal. I would not recommend, recording every single note you play and then listening, analyzing, freaking yourself out. But since you're doing your daily practice, maybe each week you record yourself playing the audition repertoire. And that way you can listen to, where am I at week 1? Where am I at week 2? Where am I at week 3? And by then you're going to start to really hear the difference you're making. That's going to motivate you to keep on in your practicing. And that's going to give you a real accurate depiction of what you sound like and what the faculty or the judges or whomever is on the other end of the room will actually be hearing. And then the last thing I'll say in this prep time, this practice time, I think this is the most fun thing, is playing what we call mock auditions. So mock auditions, what does that mean? Maybe that's something you've done a million times, but maybe it's a new phrase to you. A mock audition is just like a pretend audition. But think of it like this, in any, I'm trying to think of a good analogy. I always sort of think about the pressure of an audition sort of similar to a sport like golf or something, where it's like, you've got to like hit that ball and it's got to get to that hole, and you've been waiting for so long and you only get a few strokes, and you've got to find that green, and you've got to take it all the way there. But how much easier is it going to be if you've been doing rounds and rounds and rounds and rounds and rounds and rounds of golf? So then it's just another hole. When you get to that moment that's supposed to be the moment full of pressure, you're used to this because you've been doing this for so long. This is no sweat for you. So if we can get used to if we can practice performing, practice auditioning, that means running through your repertoire for your cat, or running through your repertoire for your parents, or getting on Zoom with some friends and say, let's pretend this is an audition. I'm going to play my repertoire. Because if you've done your full audition 10 times, and then you walk into that room, yeah, this is supposed to be like the high pressure situation, but you've done it 10 times already. This is nothing new for you. So the more we can incorporate the practice of performance in our practice, the better equipped we'll be for the audition day.
Could you possibly even get a little more specific with that concept of practicing performance, how that specifically differs from other practice? And are there any other ways that or strategies or techniques? I used to have a teacher that said for, an audition or a piece I was prepping, even solo and ensemble, practice, put it down for 5-10 minutes, come back and pick it up cold and play it.
Mm,
That was a big thing for me of like, can you do it? Because you don't know what that day is going to be like. You may have to be waiting in a hallway and not, you may go in kind of cold and
yeah,
have to do it. So that was a way to recreate that. Is there, what else can you do to sort of put yourself in that position ahead of time?
I love that idea. That's great because that feeling of being cold is such a specific feeling and it's a real one. Um, but I think what I would say is it might feel corny, but I would say go full on like it's the real thing. So let's say, you tell your parents, we're going to do a mock audition tonight. So that means, maybe you leave the room and then you walk in and you bow or you greet them or you introduce whatever piece you're going to play and you do it and maybe you mess up, but you keep on going just like you would if it were the real audition. And then you finish, and in an audition, it will differ depending on the program, the situation. But I've often had auditions where there's no applause after I finish. It's a weird thing. It's wrong. It's terrible. Feels bad. But maybe you tell your folks before, when I finish, don't clap because this is an audition. This isn't a performance. So you finish, and maybe they both go, "What's next?" They can act the part too, and then you play whatever's next. If you're doing this with friends or teachers, folks who may be actually musicians, they may be able to help you out with other elements of an audition. Sometimes there's sight reading, so they could choose an etude or a piece of music for you to read on the spot. But sort of the more formal and the more structured we can be in this sort of pretend mock audition, I think the better. And it's gonna feel a little funny maybe the first time, but again, it's gonna feel funny in the room when you're having the real audition. So if we can do that process 5, 10 times, uh, then when we get to the real thing, it'll just be like, oh, another one of these, easy.
Yeah, and I'm sure you'll talk about this in the next section, but I think about some of the situations I've seen or been in of doing a college audition, and I was just in somebody's office with a couple faculty, and they're 5 feet away from me, and I'm playing, and they start chatting about what's going on, like.
Right.
So, I could see even saying to your parents, like at some point, turn to each other and say, that was really
Yeah.
nice. Or,
Or
like,
another thing on that note, almost every audition I've been into, I've been cut off. I'll be in the
yeah,
middle of something and you'll just get cut off. And that doesn't, for sure, that doesn't mean they may be thinking, we've heard enough. They're in. We love it. We
yeah,
don't need to hear anymore. Let's move on. Or they, who you could read a million things into it, but you could have your friend in the mock audition say, at any point, cut me off, move on to the next thing. Um, yeah, absolutely.
yeah. I guess this sort of dovetails right into, the audition day,
Yeah.
understanding what the room might be like, some of those pitfalls that we're not used to when we perform, and then, just how to best get ready for that day. What are your thoughts there?
Yeah. So I'm going to sound like a broken record, but that very first step when we talked about research, when we talked about getting in touch with people who have been through this before, we want to know exactly what this audition day is going to look like. And the way we can do that is by asking students, faculty who have been through this audition process before. So uh, if we're auditioning for Jazz U, we want to see if we can reach out to talk to anyone who's been through the program, say, hey, what was your audition process like? And they may say, oh, I was in this office and I was 5 feet away from the faculty and there were 3 people there. Or they may say, oh, I was in this big room and I was like half the room away from them and there were 10 people listening to me. Or, oh, it was just, one faculty member and me and it was very casual. So these are very different situations. We just don't want to be surprised. So if we've done our research and we've asked those questions, we'll have a better sense of what it is we're walking into. Um, and actually, I'll interrupt myself, Andy. Maybe you can share for the folks here who are applying or who are auditioning for Jazz U, what does that setting usually look like? How many faculty are you in a hall? Are you in uh, ensemble room? What can they expect? Just the uh, the experience to be like.
Yeah, for our auditions for Jazz U, normally they're in our large rehearsal room, which is it's not a huge space. It's maybe, it's enough for a big band, but not much more. You definitely wouldn't have a concert band or something like that in there. The students perform their audition with our members of our faculty in the rhythm section. So with professional musicians on piano, bass, drums, depending on, obviously if you're a pianist, you're not playing with the piano player. If you're in the rhythm section, for the comping sections of the audition, we usually have one of the horn faculty members, trombone, saxophone, play with you or play a solo with you so we can hear you, experience you comping, so there's, and then the rest of the faculty. So there's generally 7 adult, faculty members, including the rhythm section, in the room. And it,
Cool.
I know one thing that I always stress to people that are doing this audition, and I've experienced this on both ends as someone auditioning and someone hosting auditions, especially like ours, we're doing, sometimes 130, 140 auditions in a 4-day span, where we might be a little loopy. You talked about cutting things off. It is generally like we've gotten what we need. It's not a good or a bad thing. We're just trying to keep things moving.
Yep.
We may, be chatting or doing something amongst ourselves a little bit. It's almost always related to what's going on, but it may be someone just going like, oh, that's, that was great, or that's really happening, or we want to ask them this after they get done with this song, so there's this year we may be in the bistro space, the larger space, which is what we did last year for COVID concerns. So it allowed us to really spread out, and keep everybody safe. But normally it's a smaller room, and it is, with 7 people, and us at like a table, it's a little tight.
Yeah. But that's so helpful. Just, for that setting, if I were auditioning, I would really be glad to know that I can expect, 6, 7 people there, which is a very different experience than auditioning for 1 or 2 folks. I've had auditions like that as well. And I've had auditions for, 11, 12. So just having a sense of, who will be in the room, I think can be really helpful. But going back to how can we prepare for this audition day, and what can we do on that day? I mean, there's some basics here, take care of yourself, get some good sleep, do your normal routine in the morning, whatever it is. With, what do you like to have for breakfast? How do you like to warm up in the morning? Do everything as normal. You don't want to break out of your routine just because it's audition day. The more this day can be like any other day, the better. Just because in the same way that you want to play just like it's any other day, you want to reflect yourself. You're not trying to be anything other than who you are, what you are, the musician you are. If you're auditioning for college or university, maybe it's out of town, give yourself so much time, ample time to get there, to figure out, where am I going to park? Where is this building if I've never been there before? Where do I check in? Oops, I went to the wrong building. The right building is across campus. Okay, let me go over there. We don't want to be running around out of breath in a rush on this day. We've got to just try to be zen. So the less rushed we are, the more we're taking care of ourselves, eating, drinking, hydrating, the better. Now, oftentimes there will be some sort of warm-up space or warm-up room for an auditionee. As a trumpet player, I always say, don't blow all your chops in the warm-up room. Now, that's a physical thing for us brass players, because literally, we might play so much, we might run through our material so much that we've got nothing left when we go to the audition room. But I think also for any instrumentalist, the warm-up room is not a time to do another mock audition. The warm-up room is a time to get in the zone, get your instrument warmed up, get your body warmed up, but don't try to play your repertoire 5 times perfect in the warm-up room, because then if you step out and you're bound to play it perfect again. No, this is a time to take some deep breaths, get in the zone, be comfortable. I had a teacher once tell me that once you've done all your preparation, the variance of your performance on audition day in the moment, that's going to vary, anywhere from, you might give 95% your best or 100% your best, but that all that 95% is preparation, is the work you've already put in. So we're really just talking about a very small margin here, nothing to stress about, and especially not to stress about in that warm-up room. We get into the audition room. I think it's always great to introduce yourself. Maybe you can say hello to all the faculty. Be sure to say hello to the rhythm section who's there to play with you. The more we can sort of have a rapport with them, the better. And then when we get into the music itself, the more we can, just like we were practicing slow, the more we can take our time and be slow in the room, the better. Now this goes for when we're playing with the rhythm section. No need to just count off immediately and jump into it. Take 10 seconds, let the rhythm section know, hey, I was thinking I'll play the melody and then I'll take a couple choruses, and the arrangement could go sort of like this. Or just check in, make sure they're cool, they don't have any questions. Say you're doing sight reading. They put music in front of you. Sometimes there can be an instinct. Okay, here we go. Start. But no, take 10 seconds, take 20 seconds. If you need 30 seconds, key signature, time signature. How does this look? The more time you can take, the better your performance will be, the more comfortable you'll be. And I think the faculty, the judges, whomever will be impressed with your maturity in the moment. So the more time we can take, the better we can treat ourselves. And the more we can work with the people in the room, the rhythm section in the room, the other faculty in the room, like we're all human beings, rather than, you're on your own and everyone else is just judging you, because that's really not the case. Everyone's really just trying to see, how can this person fit in our program and what's the best way for them to get in. So that's what I've got. I know we may have a question or two before we wrap up here, so I want to cut myself off. But Andy, any thoughts or questions at this point?
Yeah, what do you say? You talked about a situation, understanding that you may be in a position like an audition where the tunes are wide open, and you're walking in, it's a college audition, the repertoire of your choice, or maybe they just said, a swing standard and a Latin standard. What are your thoughts on having, music with you, or things prepared to hand to the rhythm section?
Yeah, I think it's great if you have music with you to hand to the rhythm section. That can help make it super clear exactly what you want to do. There may also be requirements. There may be specifications based on the program of what they want you to do exactly. But whether or not you have music to hand a rhythm section, I think taking a moment to talk through is going to be really helpful, even if they have music in front of them or if they don't. To say, hey, first tune I'm going to do is Billy's Bounce. It's in the key of F. I'll play the melody for 2 choruses. And then for the first chorus of solo, can we do solo breaks? So break every 4 bars. And then for the next chorus, we'll swing out and I'll play in time for 2 choruses. And then I'll hand it off to the piano. That's a little bit complicated, but just to the point of, getting everyone together and saying, here's the plan, here's the arrangement. It may be as simple as, I'm going to play the melody, then I'm going to solo. But if you've got anything else up your sleeve, if it's a song that requires a little bit more of an arrangement, taking 10 seconds, 20 seconds, 30 seconds, just make sure the rhythm section is comfortable. They're there to help you sound good. So the better that they can sound, the more comfortable they can be, the better.
What are your thoughts on, you walk into the room, you have something really set in your mind that's going to happen, and if we're talking about a combo like audition, like a Jazz U or a lot of these college auditions, and they say just one time through the melody, two choruses, and then stop. And that's not exactly how you prepared.
Yeah.
How do what are your strategies to address that kind of something that may feel like a little bit of a curveball?
Yeah. Those curveballs, I think you can expect those curveballs to happen. It may be a situation like that where it's just not what you had planned, or there may be situations where they're trying to throw a curveball at you. Either way, uh, I think remembering that you are being evaluated not just for the notes you play, but for how you react and respond in a situation. So it could be a wonderful thing. You could be showcasing, some of the best sides of you as a student and as someone learning this music, uh, to react and respond in a situation like that with sort of a yes and mentality. So it's like, okay, uh, that's not the arrangement I was planning to do, but let's go for it, and do your best. And oftentimes, I think the folks on the other side, whether that's you, Andy, or any faculty at any school, they'll be able to tell, like, oh, this isn't exactly what the student planned, or oh, we're throwing them a curveball on purpose. They learned it in this key, and we're going to ask them after they played in that key if they can try playing another key just to test them. Anything could happen. But whenever those things happen, uh, if you can show that, you know, you're game to give it a try, and you may fall on your face, but that's also, part of the spirit of learning is, you know, failing and getting better and trying again and working with others and saying yes. And I think that's a wonderful thing to showcase in an audition as well. So don't beat yourself up on it. No need to hyperventilate in the moment. If you just say, okay, let's try that, you're bound to be showing off all your skills that go beyond your instrument.
I'm always curious to hear people's thoughts and how they, we're talking about jazz auditions specifically, how you approach improvisation in an audition, especially if it's, I have 2-3 choruses on this song, 2-3 choruses on this song, and then that's it. How does that differ for you from going to a gig or a jam session, and how you play?
Well, there's sort of two sides of the coin, because on one side, if you know you have a very limited opportunity to try to showcase where you're at and what you have, there's nothing wrong with having some architecture of a solo in your mind. There are great recordings we listen to of some of our favorite jazz musicians in history, and sometimes every time they would play one song, there would be a sort of a similar architecture or similar solo, and they would vary how they approach it on any given day. There's nothing wrong with that. At the same time, I think if one can demonstrate that they're really present and in the moment and reacting to who they're playing with, so that the rhythm section isn't just a play along track, but there's conversation going on between the rhythm comping of the drums and the soloist, or uh, the way the pianist is comping with the instrumentalist. I think if there's an opportunity to demonstrate that you're really there and you're listening, that's fantastic too. So you sort of you can't go wrong either way. But again, if we're too tied to doing it one way, like if we've prepared a solo and we're going to play the solo exactly that way, no matter what the rhythm section is playing, uh, then we're sort of setting ourselves up for these curveballs and these things that could throw us off.
Awesome. Yeah. I know that's just you see people on both ends, like,
Yeah.
I'm only going to play it exactly this way, or, close our eyes and pray for the best. So,
Yeah.
did have one question here in the Q&A, and if anybody has any last questions, feel free to send them our way. We're just about to wrap up, but someone was asking, what are some college programs that you would specifically recommend looking into applying to?
College programs I would recommend, there are so many great programs, it's hard to answer that question. I think in every region of the country, there are extraordinary jazz programs. Um, you have conservatories. I went to Juilliard, which is a conservatory in New York City. In New York alone, there are other conservatories like Manhattan School of Music, the New School, um, conservatories with really strong programs. And then in the Northeast, you look at a place like Boston with Berklee School of Music, New England Conservatory. Um, there are a lot of really, really strong programs in all of those places. When you start to look at universities um, or music schools within larger universities, whether it be uh, state schools, I came from Seattle, the music program at University of Washington was very strong. There, or private schools, schools like Northwestern University, there are a number of universities that have really strong music programs within them. So I would look local and see what are the local universities, what are the local schools, what are the music programs they offer. And then in terms of liberal arts colleges or community colleges, I would, instead of recommending any offhand, I would just say wherever you may be looking based on other things you're pursuing in your life in terms of academics, college, all that stuff, do a little research to see what music is offered there, because there are places like Stanford has a great jazz big band, and you may not know that when you're applying to Stanford, but if you learn that and get in touch with whomever is teaching music at the school, or if there's a different school you're applying to and you get in touch with music faculty, there could be scholarship opportunities there, or they could just try to help support you in the application process to, maybe help you get into that school or even get you some money so that you can be in that program.
Yeah, I know we talk with a lot of our students about, when they say, what school should I look at? The first question is, well, what do you want? Is always, and I think understanding that schools are, it's not just what schools will take you, but what school will give you what you need. And I feel like high school students, especially looking at colleges, are sort of at a loss about, putting themselves first in a way. You're the one, I was gonna say, you're the one giving them a lot of money and your years of your life and stuff too. So
and there's so many great programs. I mean, just thinking around St. Louis, and I'm sure all the faculty, and Andy included, will have great recommendations for programs in the area. I just thinking about all the great faculty, at our friend Garrett Schmidt at Edwardsville, University of Southern Illinois, Edwardsville. There's also the program at University of Southern Illinois, which is separate from the Edwardsville school. Great music program. And any other regional schools and programs that immediately come to mind for you, Andy?
Yeah, I mean, there's the University of Missouri St. Louis. We have another one of our Jazz U faculty that's the head of the department there. The Southern Illinois University, Edwardsville, like you mentioned, where Garrett teaches, and one of their head of their jazz department is on our Jazz U faculty as well. University of Missouri. A lot of our students have been attending University of Missouri Kansas City, which is where Bobby Watson was for a long time. I think Adam Larson is teaching some adjunct there now. So yeah, I mean, I think I always love that approach of starting, looking both locally and nationally. I see so many kids that are just like, Juilliard, Berkeley, North Texas, just all in on those schools.
And one of the great things about starting locally is that, you could go get a lesson with Adam Larson and ask someone like him what that program is like, or similarly with a Garrett Schmidt, or, any of these faculty that may also be involved in Jazz St. Louis. You can start to learn a lot more very quickly and build relationships with all these great musicians.
Yeah, I think we've got one last question here, and then we'll need to wrap things up. But Owen here was asking about, a little more about improvisation in an audition. And I think especially for a beginner, if you someone who is just getting started improvising, what kind of things would you tell them to focus on, especially in terms of an audition?
Well, I would say when you're in that practice phase before the audition, I would think as much as you can about um, slowing things down so that you can really get used to the harmony and the chords. The slower we go learning the harmony, learning the chords, the more we'll soak it in like a sponge, and the more ingrained it'll be in us. And then I would also think about transcription. So the more we can learn the language of this music by hearing other people who may be more fluent in the language than us, uh, the faster we'll start to pick it up. So slowing things down, listening as much as possible so that we can learn this language. So then when it's our turn to speak, we have some words to speak with, to put together sentences and to really, you know, even if we are not waxing poetic, Shakespeare on the spot, we can still communicate and we can still improvise using the language and the material that we have. So that when we're in the room, no use trying to again, be John Coltrane right there in the moment. All you have to be is yourself with the tools you have.
Awesome. So I think that about does it for our session tonight. So I want to say, of course, a big thank you to Riley for being with us. Big thank you to everyone that is here attending, watching with us both in the Zoom and who joined us on Facebook.